It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of 2023's Brouhaha. Dale McKee and I here, ready for another year. Dale, how's it going so far? How's 2023 looking so far for you?
Well, it's looking pretty good. I hate what happened in that Monday night football game, but I was kind of put a little damper on it. But as far as me, everything's going really well.
Yeah, I know that was a unique thing in the history of the sport. I mean, the young man, I understand, had a cardiac arrest during the game. Nobody knew at that time, but we do continue, to pray for he and his family and the situation. Of course, this is secondary, of course, but it certainly puts an interesting twist. And I feel like a heathen even mentioned this, but it does. The reality, it does put an interesting twist on what happens, with the playoffs and the seedings. I mean, how are they going to? They got one regular season game left, and then the playoffs start. How will they get through this? What will they do, Dale?
I don't know. They're not going to delay the Super Bowl because they've got they've got a time and a place for that. But I guess they could almost delay the playoffs a week leading up to that and not have that week in between. But I don't know. It just seems like the game may have to be played depending on what I guess happens this weekend too.
Yeah, there's some serious ramifications.
Yeah,
playoff ramifications.
Well, it's who's going to host the championship game if those two get there.
Yeah.
And of course, those two are not guaranteed, but still, there's you have to allow for that, and they may just play it at a neutral spot then.
Yeah.
They might say, okay, if you two get it, we're going to have to go to a neutral place to play, Instead of playing in Cincinnati, you play in Toledo.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. But no, I just don't like it happen. And the young man, I don't know if you saw, but he had a little deal there, I think in Buffalo maybe, I'm not sure, that he was trying to raise $2,500 for toys for kids. And as of this morning, it was over $1 million already.
Wow. So, that's a great story.
I mean, people have a great heart.
Yeah, they do.
Now, they said that he's, don't know how, as we're taping the show today, don't know how he's, at this moment, he's, they saying that, that brain's a very particular organ. Nobody really understands it to a certain degree, but from past, accidents over the years, similar to what he has, the Hamlin's his last name. He is 4 or 5 days. They'll know more, and that's got a big gut wrenching on that family.
Oh yeah.
To have to. Just wait, and his teammates. How do they prepare for the next game?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So let's remember him in our prayers and his family. But Dale, let's move our attention to the rest of the show tonight. Here we have I tell you what, tell us about our guest. I'm excited about this guy. I mean, this guy brings a message of I guess of hope. And that's so tell us about it.
Well, his name's Randy Grimes. He's from out there in Texas area. I think he'll tell you on the show. I believe it was Tyler, Texas. He went to Baylor University and played for the great Grant Taft back during the '80s, and he was a very, very good college football player. Ended up going to the pros, playing for Tampa for 10 years. Played center and got addicted to, drugs and he's
and we're going pain pills.
Yes, and he's going to tell you that story about how long it took him to get off. But the most amazing thing about this whole deal was that his wife hung in there with him.
Yeah,
got her through it.
Yeah,
and everything.
Well, we're looking forward to, and it's Randy Grimes, right?
Randy Grimes.
We're looking forward to talking to him, so we don't want to put that off any longer. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, then Dale and I'll be back with tonight's guest, Randy Grimes, after this Brouhaha break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome to the show, Randy Grimes. How are you doing today, Randy?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas to you and everybody else out there.
Well, in general, in our introduction, we just told them about that you played college football at Baylor and you were a high draft choice in the NFL. You're round two. That's not bad in 1983. And I was going to ask you, the first question was, who did Tampa draft in round one that year?
They didn't. That was the year before, 1982. There was a huge mistake during the draft, and they accidentally drafted a guy named Booker Reese. And it was a huge mistake. They were scrambling to make up for it. They traded away their first-round pick in '83 so that they could draft guard Sean Farrell out of Penn State. So that's how I wound up being the first pick of the Buccaneers in '83, although I was a second-round pick, 45th selection.
So did you get first-round money? Did you get first-round money, Randy?
First-round pick.
Did you get first-round money, Randy? That's what I want to know.
No, I did not.
They still
That's
stuck
the
you.
part I always leave out. That ruins the story.
There you go. I got you. Anyway, so, tell them a little bit about you playing in the pros for 10 years, but I'm going to let you take over from here. You tell us about your 10-year experience in the NFL or even at Baylor and what it has led to up to what you're doing today.
Well, and I had a great college career. I had a great high school career. It seems like football came easy for me, and I had an opportunity to go anywhere in the Southwest Conference. Of course, now it's the Big 12, but the Southwest Conference that I wanted to. And, I chose Baylor. I wanted to play for Grant Taft. I wanted to play for those great teams that he had back then and those great players on those teams. And, practicing against Mike Singletary every day for 2 years made me a better center. And, we won the Cotton Bowl, or no, not the Cotton Bowl. We won the Southwest Conference in '80 and played in the Cotton Bowl. Got hammered by Alabama in the Cotton Bowl 30-2. But what a great experience! We won the Peach Bowl. Again, football came easy for me, and when I started seeing those scouts come around my sophomore year, looking at the Singletaries and the Walter Abercrombies and Van McElroys of the world, I figured, wow, somebody that's actually would pay me to play a sport that I would gladly play for free. And so that's when I really got serious about going to the next level. And had a great junior and senior year. Had a great appearances at the combine. I was my 40 time was improving, and everything was just going in the right direction. And the draft was so much different back then. Now it's green rooms and private jets and 2 or 3 day extravaganzas on TV and in Las Vegas and all that. But back in 1983, it was just me and my wife sitting by a telephone in a 1-bedroom efficiency on the campus of Baylor University, waiting for it to ring. And I thought the Cowboys were going to draft me. I had several reports that the Cowboys were going to draft me, and ESPN was kind of new then, and MTV had just started and all that, so we were trying to keep up with it as best we could. But the Cowboys came, they drafted, they didn't draft me, and I was kind of down. And the very next pick was Tampa Bay, and I can still remember John McKay's old cigar, stained, raspy voice. I picked up the phone and he said, "Hey, Randy, this is John McKay. We just drafted you in the second. See you tomorrow." Click. And I was like, "Hey, wait, Coach. Where's Tampa? I mean, I was an East Texas kid who'd never even seen the ocean, and here I was going to the seaside community of Tampa, Florida, and we had just gotten married, me and my wife, and we were going out there to start our family, our lives together, and my career at pro football. And we were excited because the Bucks had gone to the playoffs in '82. They were a playoff team, and so I was all jacked up. I was going to go out there and play with greats like Leroy Selman and Doug Williams and Ricky Bell and some of these huge names that Hugh Green, these huge names that I'd been watching all through college. So I was excited, man, and we hooked up everything we owned in the back of a small little U-Haul and hooked it up to our Burgundy Cutlass Supreme, and off we went from Waco to Tampa, and we were excited. But I will say this, and to get into my story a little bit about what happened in the pros. When I first got out there, I had a locker right next to Leroy Selman, and that was huge for me to have to be next to somebody who was a legend in the game, somebody that I had followed all through college. And even his college career. And, the first thing I learned from Leroy, and this was like mini camp before the first ever training camp I had in the pros. The first thing I learned from Leroy was that football was no longer a game. Now it was a job. And the second thing I learned from Leroy was you do whatever you have to stay out on that field, because if you're not out there in your position, somebody else was going to be. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want to get the reputation of always missing practice or always being on the injury report or always being back in the training room, being looked at by the doctor, because that was a reputation you would never get away from in what was sure to be a short NFL career. So, and I'm sure Leroy didn't mean for me to take a handful of pain pills every day to get through and practice through the injuries and everything that was going on in professional football. But, that's what I did, and I justified it so easy. I looked at it like a necessary evil, to be the best that I could be, to play the game for as long as I could, to feed my family, to be a Pro Bowler, to get that next big contract. Those are ways that I justified what I've just called a necessary evil. And that's what started. And, it started off innocently enough. I wasn't going to be on that injury report. I was not going to be hanging out in that training room. I was going to play every snap, and I was not going to let anybody get in my position. And, what that necessary evil, what it really was and what it really turned into was just a full-blown addiction to not only pain medication, but also sleeping pills to get to sleep at night through the different injuries and everything else. So, the crazy thing about it is, I was getting it from the team doctors, or I was getting it from the team trainers, and I'm talking about the medication. I was getting it from teammates, and or I had fans right outside the door who'd get me anything that I wanted, and again, those are other ways that I justified what I was calling necessary evil, but what it really was a full-blown addiction. And in those not 10 years, but probably that 8.5 to nearly 9 years that this was going on, not once did anybody ever say, Randy, why are you slurring your words, or you late to practice every day, or why are you nodding off meetings, and we had a drug safe in the middle of our training room, and it was full of narcotics, and it was never locked. And if it ever was accidentally locked, we had 3 white guys that started on defense, and their jersey numbers were the combination to that safe the whole decade that I was there. Yeah. So you could just go get out whatever you wanted. And so, I looked at it like that was nobody ever called me out on those things because I was always playing good. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, So that was kind of the culture back then. And, it's crazy what it progressed to, because the last 2 years of my career, I don't even remember being out on that field. I was taking so much medication before games And the night before that, I would be out. I would wake up later at home, laying on my couch after playing an entire football game, starting center in the NFL, either at home or somewhere in the country. And I would start kind of coming around a little bit, and coming out of the blackout. And I didn't remember anything about the game that I just played. And I was a center. I was the quarterback of the offensive line. I was making audibles and blocking schemes. I was getting guys going in the right direction. I was listening for the quarterback to change snap counts or change the plays. I had to do all of this in a blackout. And, that's when I really realized, that last 2 years is when I really realized that this thing was out of control, out of hand, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop the insanity because the addiction was in full gear by then. And, my wife, my family, nobody ever suspected anything because coming home and crashing on the couch or crashing in bed or whatever after working out. And, we played in an era where we just beat the heck out of each other every practice. That old Bear Bryant mentality where if you don't practice hard, you're not going to play hard. And there was a lot of injuries that we sustained just during practice. And, it was a crazy way to do things back then, but that was the way coaches were. And, we beat the heck out of each other in 100-degree heat every day. And then, so me going home and crashing or passing out or falling out or whatever at home was not a big red flag for my family. Yeah. But I knew deep down that there was a serious problem playing those games in blackouts. And what I never expected was to take that into my private life.
How in the world did you get over that, Randy? That's a tough pull.
Well, and in the 10 years that I was at Tampa, I played for 5 different head coaches. I played for 6 different offensive line coaches, and I probably had 10 different quarterbacks get up underneath me. And we were a revolving door of players, coaches, front office people. I probably had 4 different general managers in that 10 years. But the one consistent thing about the 80s and early 90s was Randy Grimes at center. I seemed to survive all those changes. And I remember that last year, 1992, after our last game, and I remember feeling a hand on my shoulder. I had a locker right next to the door. And I remember feeling a hand on my shoulder, and I felt the breeze of somebody walking by me. And I heard the words, "Randy, we won't be needing you next year." And as I turned to look, all I could see was Sam Weish hitting that silver bar in the middle of that door and exiting out the locker room. And it was over then.
Wow.
I'd had an injury that year, and I couldn't go out, and I wasn't going to be able to go try out for anybody else. And, I remember hearing those words and thinking, man, that's how it ends. After all the blood, sweat, and tears that I've left on football fields all over this country since 4th grade. And that's how it ends. A coach that I've only had for a year, who has no loyalties to me, who I hardly even know, doesn't even have the courtesy to stop and look me in the eye as a man and tell me, that I'm not needed here anymore. And, I can remember just kind of raking everything out of my locker into a black trash bag and walking out the back door. And Randy Grimes, the football player, didn't exist anymore. And, that was just throwing gasoline on an already raging dumpster fire that was the addiction. When I didn't have that uniform or I didn't have that playbook anymore or that itinerary, I didn't have that identity of being Randy Grimes, the football player. I struggled for many years after that, not only with the addiction, but with that underlying mental illness of that identity crisis,
How in the world tell us, how did you get through that, Randy? How did you come out on the other side to be where you are today?
Well, the perfect storm was happening in the spring and summer of 2009, and like I said, I retired in 93. And, there were some good times in there, and there was a lot of bad times in between. But the perfect storm in the summer and spring of 2009 was Tom McHale, a guy that I played next to for many years in Tampa. He was a right guard for me, and, he was doing the same things that I was doing, and that was self-medicating the injuries he got while he was in the NFL. One morning, he just didn't wake up. And that got my attention. You know, I was having a series of seizures, a lot of seizures as a result of withdrawal from the medication that I was on. My daughter wouldn't let me come around my first grandchild because I wasn't fit to be around her new baby. And my wife had realized that she was just loving me to death, and she couldn't sit by and watch me continue to decline and kill myself like I was doing. So she had to take a step back. So all those factors is what finally made me put my hand up and ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's the real question. You know, why did it take so long? Even though I was losing everything, why did it take so long for me to put my hand up and ask for help? And, you know, I've looked back at it. You know, here it is almost 14 years later since I got sober. And I look back and, you know, pride and ego had a lot to do with it. Guilt and shame had a lot to do with it. And, you know, I thought I was the only one out there struggling like that. There was all that guilt and shame of being a former NFL player, you know. And the second-round draft pick, I had a great career, and here I was losing everything.
Yeah.
And that's what finally made me put my hand up, and that was September 22nd, 2009. That's when I got sober.
Wow. There's a lot of hope there that you could get through that for others.
Well, how
Well, yeah, and that's my message today is that, you know, it's okay to not be okay, but you've got to ask for help because there is help out there. There's help and there's hope, and people recover, families recover, marriages recover, but you got to put your hand up and you got to do the work, and there's a lot of work involved in it, but, I mean, it's all on the sunny side of the street.
Well, listen, how are you helping folks now? How are you helping former players, and even you're crossing the line? You're not just not helping football players now. You're helping players in all sports,
or anybody that puts their hand up and asks for help. You know, well, I tell you what, I can remember being in treatment and thinking about all the guys that I knew. Guys that I'd played with and guys that I'd played against who were out there struggling just like I was. And listen, when I came into treatment in 2009, there was nothing out there for former players. And a lot of the guys, like me, had lost everything. You know, they had no insurance, they had no money, pretty much had lost their families, just about everything. And I knew that there was a lot of guys out there that just for the same reasons, pride, ego, guilt, shame, wouldn't put up their hand and ask for help. So I got with the NFL, and we started a new program there called the Player Care Foundation. It was kind of a spinoff from the Alumni Association, and we started going out, sharing my story, reaching out to all these guys, and they just started coming out of the woodwork. And this was like in 2010. And, you know, guys are coming out of the woodwork, and not only former NFL players, but Major League Baseball, hockey, and NBA. I work with, or my nonprofit, which is Pro Athletes in Recovery, we work with just about every sport you can think of that has an organization that supports their former players, from the Jockeys Guild to the MMA fighters to the PGA, LPGA, you know, and even the tennis players. We pretty much work with anybody, but I also am always cautious not to box myself in and say I only work with athletes. I'll work with anybody or any family that'll raise their hand and ask for help because, I mean, this is a disease that affects everybody, not just former players. It just so happens that I'm a former player and that was my niche. But I work with everybody. You know, my wife and I have been all over the country doing interventions on anybody because we know that there's hope and there's help. But, you know, sometimes it takes a little extra to persuade somebody to make that move. But, you know, I'm just so grateful for my life now. It's almost like, and I remember Coach Taft and even Coach Sherrill said this before, you know, it's like God allowed this to happen to you so that you could do the work that you do. And I feel that every day. And I'm just grateful for where I am. You know, it's unfortunate what I did go through, but, you know, it's for a purpose, I feel like. And, you know, my family, I'll tell you a little bit about the book that I wrote, Off Center. And the reason that I wanted to write that book was because I didn't care if it sold a copy or not. I just wanted my family to have a platform to heal.
Yeah.
And that's what it accomplished. You know, my kids had a part in it. My wife had a part in it. My mom, my dad. Everybody that was affected by my addiction had a platform in it. And the book turned out just so good. There's something in there for everybody. And I'm just proud of the way that it turned out. And it accomplished its goals. You know, everybody, our family has healed. And, you know, everybody's involved with me in one way or the other. My wife is a family interventionist, and she's on board. And, you know, there's just been it's almost been 14 years since I got sober, but there's been a lot of healing in those 14 years. And I'm fortunate that I've had the support that I've had. You know, Coach Ditka wrote the foreword for my book. Coach Taft wrote an endorsement. Coach Sherrill wrote an endorsement. I've worked with Coach Sherrill on numerous occasions over the last 14 years. And I have such respect for all those guys. They had such a great influence on my life. And not only while I played, but afterwards, and through this and what I do now. So I'm fortunate. I'm one of the lucky ones that I made it.
Well, and you're taking advantage of that, and you're using it for the proper glory, and we salute you in that. Like I told you when we got started, I'm the timekeeper. and unfortunately,
I told you I would rattle if you didn't stop me.
We're going to ring them. No, you did great, you know, and we're encouraged by your story. I mean, this is my first time to chat with you, and I'm encouraged by your story because there's a lot of folks needs help, and you provide a great avenue to share an avenue for that with folks. We salute you in that, Randy. We do.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to hang on with us. We're going to sign off for this segment, but stick on, hang with us just a second. But for right now, Dale and I are going to take a break, and we'll come back with the next segment of tonight's Brouhaha right after this word from our sponsor.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everyone. What a blessing it was to have Randy with us today, and we certainly appreciate him and his story and his ministry, and we're encouraged by that, Dale. Good job, buddy. Good job.
Well, I think he's got a great message. You know, somebody in our audience may know somebody going through this.
That's right.
And so, you know, maybe that will give them some hope. You know, there's always hope.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Good point. Listen, Dale, the bowls, I mean, it was a great bowl season. I'm going to tell you, I have enjoyed it. I've watched a lot of college football over the holidays. I haven't done that in a few years, just sitting down. But, man, you got to pick one game that you enjoyed the most out of the bowl games. Which one would it have been, Dale, and why?
Whew. I'll tell you what, there were some exciting games. You know, I'm just kind of looking back at some of these ball games. I'm going to try to get a list here, but just look back at, I guess it was I would say LSU Purdue, but no,
No.
You know, there were some interesting games.
How about that Tulane beating Southern Cal?
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. Some of them games from yesterday. You know, I thought Mississippi State's game was great.
Do you know what a bad beat is?
Wasn't it?
A bad beat. Okay, that's when. Okay, now Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. You know, that was they were 3.5 point favorites, and at the end of when they scored that last when they scored last and took the lead, if you'd bet on the Illini, you were winning.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this is where the bad beat comes in. Okay. 4 seconds left in the game. And you sitting there, if you'd bet on the Illini, you won him. You won. Mm-hmm. You get 3.5 points. All right. Well, on the last play of the game, they kicked it off and they did all that lateral and stuff, and it looked like it was going pretty good. They fooled around and wound up in the hands of the Bulldogs, and they ran it back for a touchdown, and guess what? You didn't win your money no more. How disappointing would that be? But anyway, that was an interesting game. That was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think, the Southern Cal Tulane game was great. Mississippi State and Illinois, the last few minutes was really good. It was a little boring game, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think the Georgia and Ohio State and TCU and Michigan, I don't think we got words for those two ball games. They were just tremendous ball games.
Yeah.
I thought that I'm just looking. Pittsburgh came back, beat a good UCLA team, and North Dakota, Notre Dame and South Carolina had a heck of a ball game. I thought. I tell you, one team that really impressed me was Washington.
Yeah.
They did a good job against that. I thought Ole Miss laid an egg.
I did too.
I thought Southern Miss did really well. Of course, we talked about their great win. I thought the Florida State-Oklahoma game was very exciting too. I thought that Arkansas and Kansas that was a classic.
Yeah.
You just didn't. Nobody could stop each.
Let me ask you this:
Sure.
how are you liking the national championship game? Is TCU a team of destiny? They were 5-7 last year. Now they're playing for a national championship. Sonny Dykes, first year there. I mean, what a great story. Do they have a chance? I'm going to tell you what, I don't think they got a chance. But now you may feel otherwise.
Well, I just think that they got a great story to tell. I just love the quarterback. I think he does some remarkable things. Of course, I think Stetson Bennett for Georgia has proved the last 3 games. It's like Paul Feinbaum said the other day. He's a closer like a baseball pitcher.
Yeah.
He can close a game as well as anybody. These last 3 games he's played in the playoffs, 2 last year and 1 this year. He's closed the game.
I was kind of surprised at the conclusion of that game when they were talking to Coach Smart, and he was upset with Bennett. He said he's going to have to learn to play in the system. I'm saying he's 25 years old. He's a Heisman finalist. He won a national championship last year. You're 1 game away from winning the national championship this year, and you're telling us he's got to learn to play in the system? What did he do wrong? What did he do to get upset? To make his coach upset?
I don't know. All I know is that I've heard of quarterbacks getting fussed before, and they'll say, "Well, why did you do that?" Well, the guy was wide open, Coach. The guy was wide open.
Yeah.
The guy was wide open, so I threw it to him. I guess that's where he got him on that last play when he threw that ball. That wide open guy. I don't know, but Stinson did great. Coach, you need to ease up too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a lot of pressure on him, but. I thought, there were some great games. There were some overtime games. There were some games I was kind of, I guess the biggest shocker to me. Well, what was the biggest upset? Was it Tulane or was it TCU?
I'd say Tulane.
Yeah, because
I'd say Tulane.
I think but just looking at the guys that I kind of picked bowls against. Some 8 of them picked Tulane, which surprised me because I never thought Tulane had a chance.
Yeah.
And I thought Southern Cal's offense would just put 50 or 60 on there, but and I'll be honest with you, I just kind of turned the channel when it's 42-30.
Yeah.
I don't watch it anymore. I missed the best part.
That's kind of a bad beat in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without the money.
Yeah. But, you do get to see replays in this day and time. So, anyway, but it was a good bowl season.
Yeah.
I think that we're getting the college atmosphere back. And, a friend of mine said this. He's a big Ole Miss fan. He said, look at the SEC West. Everybody won but Ole Miss. But he said, look at this. You got the Sugar Bowl champion, you got the Liberty Bowl champion, you got the Citrus Bowl champion. Let me see who else is in there. Is there somebody? Oh, Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Okay, they're a bowl champ. Okay, then you got Georgia. Okay, and then Ole Miss has got Tulane next year. All those people, Ole Miss plays next year. They play Georgia, and they play Tulane. So they're gonna play 6 bowl champs, and I'm just looking at it. Mississippi State had a real difficult football schedule this year, one of the toughest in the nation. I think Ole Miss is going to have that next year.
State's got 8 home games next year, I think. crazy. But anyway, what else is crazy is we're out of time, Dale.
Is it already?
It's already time. It flies when you're having fun. We want to thank tonight's guest again for being with us, and I'm going to thank you, Dale, for all you do. And we want to wish you all a happy new year and a great year in sports. I do want to remind you that you can follow us on Facebook at the Brouhaha, and all of our past shows are cataloged on our YouTube channel at the Brouhaha. Check us out. But for now, as is customary, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
And we'll see you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Take us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.